Hello and welcome to the 105. I'm Cooper Petagna. That's 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins. And today is a great day to be alive. Andrew, 2025, number one player in the country, Bryce Underwood, shaking things up. The rumor mill is swirling, my friend, as the number one quarterback. And like I said, number one prospect in the land who is committed to the LSU Fighting Tigers. Well, there's some smoke there that Bryce Underwood could end up in Ann Arbor playing for his hometown Michigan Wolverines. Drew, Pete Nakos of On3 reported on Tuesday that Michigan has a quote-unquote competitive NIL package for Underwood that's valued above $5 million over 3 to 4 years. The offer is on par with what LSU has sent Underwood. Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy is apparently part of the boosters involved in the new look NIL operation. So a lot to consider, obviously, in the stakes for the number one player in the country, especially in today's age of name, image, and likeness. But Drew, I guess I'll just go to you and get your initial thoughts on everything you think between the LSU commit and what Michigan is trying to do to pony up to get Bryce Underwood in the boat.
Coop, I feel like you're lacking some energy here, man. Come on, this is big news. Number one ranked player. A guy we have raved about, kept at the top of the board, looking around in Michigan, which has had its fair share of issues under center. This could be the answer for them long term. I mean, this is like selecting number one in the NFL draft, number one overall, right? Your choice of the quarterback prospect. From what I've gathered, and I'm certainly not in the scoop game these days, but I do think this is real, Cooper. I think there are some legs to this. Talking with someone up in Ann Arbor a few days ago, I think Michigan, Sharon Moore has ramped things up on the recruiting front. I know Bryce Underwood's the guy we want to talk about, but you look at the visitors they brought in for the Michigan State game. I mean, they are recruiting. They are making senior season evaluations. And to me, this is a signal from the top that things need to change. And it's kind of been what we were talking about. All right, what is next for Michigan after this season? You win a national title. You regress mightily here post Jim Harbaugh, but you look at 2025, you're losing potentially 3 NFL first-round draft picks on the defensive side of the ball. You're losing your top 2 running backs. You're losing your X factor of a tight end. Needs to be something different. And for Bryce Underwood, I mean, this is a situation where he could step in and be the guy day one. We think he is that ready. We think he is that advanced. So I love it because it gives us a storyline as we approach signing day.
It appears that playing time, outside of the fact that he's probably going to be making north of $1.5 million a year, whether it's in Baton Rouge or whether it's in Ann Arbor, obviously financial implications have a lot to do with this as well. But path to the field, I think when you look at Michigan, their quarterback situation right now is a mess. What we've seen, Jack Tuttle has retired. It's been Davis Warren as of late against Michigan State. We've seen a little bit of Alex Orji, and then we haven't seen Jaden Davis at all. So I think the path to the field at Michigan is a little bit more clear than it is in Baton Rouge. We'll see what happens with Garrett Nussmeier, who seems by the half a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, there's times like I was texting you joking, hey, what do the odds look like for Garrett Nussmeier to be the number one pick in the draft? The second half of that game, I'm thinking, all right, this guy needs to come back for another year. So we'll see what happens there, Drew. But just in terms of, the player impact is obviously monumental, and the 2025 impact, I think, would be sizable. But what does this do for a first-year head coach who's 5-3 in his first year? It seems like he's kind of drinking through a fire hose a little bit to kind of calm the waters. And now you kind of have a short-term and a long-term solution at the game's most important position. And you had that in J.J. McCarthy. You went to 3 straight college football playoff appearances. He ends up going in the first 10 picks in the NFL draft, and all is well in Ann Arbor. It seems like Bryce Underwood kind of gives Sharon Moore that chip that the Wolverines had over the last 3 to 4 years.
Coop, I was thinking about this, right? Let's compare Bryce to Dylan Raiola, to DJ Lagway, who I think is going to be talked about more and more nationally here moving forward. Obviously, he starts against Georgia. I think Bryce Underwood's right there with them, and you can make a case that he is further along in terms of his ability to step in. So I think the comparison to Raiola, who has become the face of the Nebraska program, that's what Bryce Underwood would be for Michigan. And I think that would unlock so much for them on the recruiting front in terms of other prospects know who he is, right? They want to play with the best of the best quarterback. And all of a sudden we would look up after questioning, hey, what's going on with Michigan recruiting? And they'd have a pair of 5 stars in the recruiting class, Andrew Babalola, your potential left tackle of the future, and Bryce Underwood. So I think it would certainly extend the leash a little bit. And I think if he were to pick Michigan, all right, if he were to come off LSU, then you got to view him as the guy for Michigan in 2025, just like we said with Raiola, right? They can say everything they want about an offseason quarterback competition. They can play that whole game. But as we get towards that season, it's going to be all Bryce Underwood and Michigan. You won't be able to talk Michigan football without Bryce Underwood's name. Coop, the other kind of interesting thing, and I know we were talking about this off air, and I think you disagree with me a little bit, but LSU, right, just had a Heisman Trophy winner. They put Jaden Daniels in the league. He's doing it extremely well. What happens, Joe Sloan, the quarterback coach there, guy that's getting mentioned to some of these group of 5 jobs that are opening up. He played at ECU. ECU's obviously open. You said it, NIL, compensation packages, it's going to steer a lot of this conversation. But hey, what do you think if Joe Sloan were to, leave for the right job, right? A guy that is an up-and-comer, a bright offensive mind, does that kind of change things? I know you're going to say no, but I will say this. Let's go back to Dante Moore's recruitment. Remember, he was committed to Oregon, ends up opening things back up. Kenny Dillingham leaves for the job at Arizona State. I'm not saying that's going to be the reason why Bryce Underwood would come off of a long-time commitment to the folks there in Baton Rouge, but I don't think it helps, right? It certainly could, play a little role, not a big one, but maybe a small one.
Yeah, I think when you're comparing apples to apples here a little bit, I think Michigan is in a position of strength, obviously, because of geographical location, push comes to shove a little bit. You see the proximity to the program, maybe the financial offer is a little bit more lucrative, but I think everything happens. I think the most connected person in this recruitment to Bryce Underwood in Baton Rouge is Joe Sloan. So yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes players look for that opening. They look for that window. Well, Coach Sloan isn't there, and that's the guy that's recruited me over the last 2 years. So, really, what am I tied to at that point? But you look at Michigan as well. I mean, they come with their lumps as well, too, right? What we've seen from the quarterback position this year, and quite honestly, unproven staff offensively. So Bryce Underwood has to weigh those things. You think about the surrounding talent, what he would have in Baton Rouge versus what he would have in Ann Arbor. And Bryce Underwood is an amplifier. He's going to make all those guys around him look a lot better than what they actually are. I think those are all the things taken into consideration right now. And Michigan's done a good job at some positions. We talked about Andrew Babalola. We talked about the guys that they have coming to campus as well. They need to continue to surround this guy if they do end up getting him to campus. And whether it's Bryce Underwood or somebody else, you got to surround him with the right pieces to be successful. They're always going to have a solid offensive line. They're always going to have a solid run game. But what's it look like at receiver, tight end, post Colson Loveland, right? And I think that's a big question mark as well. Andrew Olesh out there flirting with other schools, Notre Dame, Oregon. So I would say a big couple months for Michigan. And, quite honestly, let's see what it looks like on the field. If they go out there, lose a game to Indiana, lose to Ohio State, maybe it's not one of those attractive situations. Maybe Michigan becomes a little bit more desperate, but it's going to be interesting here, Drew. I think it still has to play out. But at this point, like today, if I had to take a guess at where he'd end up, it seems to me like all the wind is kind of blowing in the direction of Michigan.
Wow. We need to get you a crystal ball, right? You can just fire one in there.
I have one crystal ball, and it's for Jaden Rashada to Miami. And it was correct, and then it wasn't at one point. Guys, just a reminder, you are locked in to 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, you can find everything you need to find on 247sports.com. Wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, and those transfer portal updates that are going to get cranking here soon. And just a reminder, the first rendition of the transfer portal rankings are out right now at 247sports.com. So make sure you get over there to go check that out. All right, Drew, another interesting conversation you and I were having, and I kind of really like this idea. I mean, we've talked about Florida State just not being able to get off the mat since Jordan Travis went down, and it kind of brought up the idea, all right, well, let's take a look at the top 12 to 15 teams in the country, the college football playoff contenders, and see what does their quarterback room look like in the hypothetical situation if disaster strikes and a guy like Cam Ward goes down, if a guy like Carson Beck goes down. Obviously, we hope that's not the case, but I do think it's something worth examining because you never know what's going to happen in college football. And Florida State, Florida State obviously went through that themselves. And Drew, I think it's a good idea for us to get ahead of it. So let's take a look at Jerry Palm's college football rankings, the college football playoff bracket. There you see it, 1 through 12. And Drew, you kind of diced this up in terms of the quarterback rooms in 3 buckets. You had prepared, somewhat prepared, and then you had unprepared. So I'm interested to kind of get your take on this and kind of how you see it.
So I'm writing about this for CBSSports.com and the Talent Tracker. This past weekend, right, we saw Bo Pribula come in for Drew Aller at Penn State. Saw Will Hammond step in at Texas Tech. I know they're not part of the college football playoff conversation, but I got my mind thinking, and I went and I looked. Cooper, so far, heading into week 10 of the college football season, 22 different Power 4 programs have had to play multiple, or start multiple quarterbacks due to injury. That number is likely going to jump to 25 this weekend. So I'm not trying to cast the spell on anyone. I'm not trying to jinx anyone, but quarterbacks get hurt, right? It's hard to protect them. It's the game's most important position. And I think what the playoff committee showed us last season, you are only as good as your number 2, right? Jordan Travis, he goes down. Florida State has its issues. They're left out of the big dance. And you said it, it has been downhill since then. So I thought, hey, yeah, let's look at these quarterback situations, because the other thing, Cooper, building your quarterback depth, building your quarterback room has gotten so difficult with the transfer portal and with name, image, likeness, right? It's very difficult to hold on to these guys. It's very difficult to build depth. A lot of quarterbacks, right, if they don't think they have the chance to start, they're bouncing and they're going to another school. So, yeah, I split it up into 3 different categories. I don't know the best way to go about this. We could start at the top.
Yeah, well, let me ask you some questions, because I think there are a couple that are pretty kind of like low-hanging fruit, right? You have 4 teams in the prepared category. You have Texas A&M, Miami, BYU. I think any fan out there who's been following college football knows that Texas has the best quarterback room in the country, with 2 former number 1 overall players in Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Trey Owens sitting number 3, another guy that we like. Texas A&M, you look at them and their situation, they've gone back and forth between Connor Wegman and Marcel Reed. It looks like Marcel Reed's going to be the guy. If they had to go back to Connor Wegman, I think they'd be comfortable. So that leaves the other 2 teams that I am a little bit more curious about. You have Miami in that situation outside of Cam Ward, and then you have BYU there as well. So why don't you give a little context on why you put those 2 schools in the prepared category?
Well, if you look at Miami, right, everyone knows Cam Ward. I mean, he could give the Hurricanes their first Heisman Trophy since 1992. But Mario Cristobal did also bring in another veteran transfer quarterback this offseason, and Reese Poffenberger. I call him Poff Daddy, out of Albany. He's played 1,700 career snaps. He's gotten some action here and there for the Hurricanes. I mean, it's really just been the Cam Ward show. So he's got starting experience. A ton of it. He's got a redshirt junior, got 1 more to use. And then the other guy's Emory Williams, who played as a true freshman for the Hurricanes and beat Clemson in double overtime last season. Looked really good against Florida State last year before he hurt his arm and was done for the year. So Miami, it's 2 guys with starting experience. They're trying to redshirt Emory Williams. That's based on everything that I've been able to read, talked with the guys at Inside the U. But if something were to happen with Ward, I think you got to break the glass in an emergency and maybe try to give Emory a look if you don't think Reese is that guy. So I think with Miami, they're in the prepared category because they got 2 guys with college starting experience.
Yeah, pretty interesting there. BYU, the other team that you had in there as well. Did you touch on that? Did I miss that? Or you hit that real quick?
I didn't know if you just wanted to riff there on the Hurricanes. No, BYU, Jake Retzlaff, BYU, beat out Gary Bohannon in the preseason camp. Jerry Bohannon's only thrown 3 passes this season, but this is a man, because he's 24 years old. He led Baylor to a Big 12 championship back in 2021. He's played in 37 career games. He's got an 11-8 record as a starter. He was also spent some time at USF. I mean, He's the oldest, and I think he's the most experienced out of all the college football playoff contender backups, right? So, I mean, we'll see what BYU, how the rest of the season goes. But if something were to happen to Jake, I don't know if you're going to find a better number 2 option to step in, just in terms of a guy that's seen a lot in 7 years.
Is there a bigger Kalani Sitake fan out there than you, Andrew Ivins?
I'm all in, man. I heard him speak this offseason. He had me ready to run through a wall. So Kalani Sitake, yeah, I'm all on board.
All-time good human being too. Met him multiple times. Great dude. And it's pretty cool. It seems like the right fit at BYU. As I know you and I have kind of, talked about whether or not he'd fit in other places, and I think he would. Whether or not he'd fit in the Southeast somewhere, I think maybe that's a different conversation. But Kalani Sitake doing a hell of a job in his second year in the Big 12 at BYU. All right, somewhat prepared. You have 7 teams in this category. And some of these, I think, I'm interested to get your thought. Like, I feel like they could have gone in the first bucket of prepared. You have Penn State with Bo Prabula. You have Oregon with Dante Moore, Austin Novosad. Indiana with Taven Jackson, who we've gotten to see the last 2 weeks. Notre Dame, Stephen Jelly, CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie. Georgia is a pretty interesting one behind Carson Beck in terms of what they have. Gunnar Stockton, Jaden Rashada, who played a little bit as a freshman, the transfer from Arizona State. Alabama has a hodgepodge of guys, Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and Dylan Lonergan. And then there's Ohio State, who I thought for sure would be in that first category. But I get it. I mean, as the fact that they had to bring in Will Howard kind of says that they don't love their quarterback room anyway, right? And that's Devin Brown, Julian Sand, and Aaron Nolan, right? So a lot of talented arms, but a lot of inexperience and a lot of guys that aren't proven. So, Drew, I guess I'll start with Georgia. If something were to happen to Carson Beck, what's your feel between Gunnar Stockton, Jaden Rashada? Like, do you think this team would be able to operate as an actual legit contender going forward?
Well, the answer to that would be yes, just given that defense. But from what I've heard, rave reviews about Gunnar Stockton. Here's the thing, though. He's only played 82 career snaps to date. And remember, Brock Vandergriff was there. Carson Beck announced he's coming back for one more year. Vandergriff goes to Kentucky, and now it's been Gunnar Stockton. Beck has thrown 250 of Georgia's 262 pass attempts this season. Stockton's the only other one that has played. We're talking about a former blue chip guy, someone that was in the All-American Bowl, but we just don't really have a huge sample size. He played in the Orange Bowl last year against a Florida State team that didn't have much of a pulse. He led some scoring drives there, but we haven't seen him in an SEC spot where he's had to step in. Jaden Rashada, he transfers in. He started 2 games, played in 3 as a true freshman at Arizona State. I think as a passer, there's a ton of talent there. But is he ready to step in and kind of coordinate that offense? And really, Cooper, this category of the somewhat unprepared, it's a lot of those kind of scenarios where it's a bit unclear where the team would turn. I mean, you want to mention Oregon. Dante Moore's there, former 5-star quarterback, starts 5 games as a true freshman at UCLA. Looks like they're maybe trying to redshirt him, but Austin Novosad has been the guy in mop-up duty so far for Oregon. He's only thrown 13 career passes, but I've heard from some people there inside the building that they're very high on that kid. They think, I've heard from other contacts, they think he's a name that if he were to answer the transfer portal, he's going to generate a ton of interest. So, if something were to happen with Dylan Gabriel, what direction does Oregon kind of go there? And I think you can say the same thing about Ohio State. Devin Brown starts last year's Sugar Bowl. He gets hurt. Lincoln Kineholtz comes in. Devin Brown stepped in against Michigan State when Will Howard got injured. But what about Julian Sand, the former 5-star? He's got some run as well. Just some interesting type of scenarios.
Yeah, teams that seem to have no shortage of talent, but still trying to figure out who's going to be the guy, right? You talk about Oregon, Ohio State. Alabama is one of those teams as well, even though it seems like Ty Simpson would be the guy. I'm kind of interested in what Georgia's going to do this offseason outside of Carson Beck. Do they stick with Gunnar Stockton? Do they stick with Jaden Rashada? Do they try to go get another arm in the portal? It's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Drew, the unprepared teams, you have 4 teams. Clemson at the top. Tennessee, Iowa State, Boise State. We've seen a little of Chris Vizina at Clemson. Small sample size, scouted him when he was coming out of Birmingham in Alabama. I think he's got a ways to go as well. Tennessee, we saw when Nico's backup got in the game the other week against Alabama and just totally YOLO'd his first passing attempt and threw a pick. Iowa State behind Rocco Beck, and then Boise State, you got Malachi Nelson there. So let's look at Clemson and Tennessee, because I think those are the two most legitimate CFP contenders at this point. I don't want to take anything away from Iowa State either. But Drew, which one of those makes you a little bit worried if something were to happen to either Cade Klubnik or Nico Iamaleava?
I mean, this is the red alert 5-alarm category group. If I had to pick, I think I would go with Tennessee. Gaston Moore, former walk-on, was with Josh Heupel at UCF. He's kind of been the number 2. He knows the system. But Coop, I mean, you said it. I don't know if he were to get into the game. I think that is certainly concerning. Now they got Jake Merklinger, a true freshman that they brought in, who was a 4-star quarterback for us, showed out well in the Polynesian Bowl. But if something were to happen to Nico, it's hard to see Tennessee being able to navigate and just kind of lean on the run game there with that defense. So that one's concerning. And then really Clemson as well. You know, we haven't had a ton of exposure to Vizina in college here. Struggled in his first career spring game, struggled even more in that second spring game this year, 13 of 20 passing, 129 yards. It has been that's what he's done, in college so far, but he's yet to have a big time throw, according to PFF. And then in the spring game going up against that Tigers front seven, I mean, he threw 2 picks. So, I have major questions like long-term about Clemson and what kind of the plan is post Cade Klubnik. So those two, I think, are in a category of their own. And then, you might not be believing in Iowa State, but behind Rocco Beck, they got a true freshman that has emerged as the backup quarterback. I think that's a bit concerning as well, seeing he has J.J. Cole, former 4-star recruit. He hasn't been the guy that has emerged as the number 2.
I was about to say, what happened to J.J. Cole? He was a little bit of a darling, was he not?
Yeah, I mean, big 6'6" pocket passer. Yeah, I don't really know. Coop, hey, the other thing I want to say, right, in that somewhat prepared category, I think you could make a case for Notre Dame and Penn State. We'll see how Bo does this weekend, if he is the guy against Ohio State. Brian Doan on 24/7 Sports wrote an excellent story about how Penn State was able to hold on to him in this era where so many teams are tampering, trying to grab your quarterback. I mean, they've used him as a runner in situational packages really the past 2 years after he redshirted his first season. Former 3-star prospect, but he's accounted for 13 total touchdowns and 259 career snaps. I think you could also make the case that with his mobility and his ability to make people miss as a runner in the open field, he maybe fits that Andy Colton-Necky offense a little bit better. So they could easily be in the prepared category depending on how it goes on Saturday. And then, Notre Dame, Riley Leonard's the guy there. I heard from some college contacts, like if Steve Angeli had decided to enter the transfer portal, he would have demanded a high dollar figure. He's a guy that started one game, right? Last year's Sun Bowl, 15 of 19 passing, 232 yards, 3 touchdowns. I just think you got to give them some credit there. Like they got one kind of waiting in the wings that can step in and has shown before, hey, I can win, right? If I'm given time to prepare. So those two, I think you could scale up the board. And I certainly wouldn't push back.
Yeah, I like that. And I like Bo Prabula. And Stephen Jelly is kind of one of the more curious backup quarterbacks out there, just in terms of, all right, what's he going to do next season, right? Is it a foregone conclusion that he's going to hit the portal? Is Marcus Freeman going to let him battle it out with CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie? It's going to be a pretty interesting name to watch. It makes me think I need to start doing my homework on Stephen Jelly because probably a name that's, one of those guys. If you're thinking ahead, probably going to jump in the portal. Guys, just a reminder, you are locked into the 105. You can find me and Andrew Ivins every Monday and Wednesday. Monday on CBS Sports Network at 2 o'clock Eastern time, and Wednesday right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, 1 o'clock Eastern time. And then wherever you find your podcasts, Spotify, Apple included, make sure to leave a rating in a review, guys. We appreciate you listening as always. And another thing I want to plug is right now we're doing some great work. We're trying to get to all 67 Power 4 teams, doing an 8 to 10 minute rundown, 2025 class breakdown. And those videos will live not only on the 105 podcast stream, but they'll live on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. How many have we done so far, Drew? 10 to 12? I mean, we're kind of inching our way through there, right?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think if you're looking for a drive-by synopsis of a team's recruiting class, or you just want to learn players that you're going to be hearing about in 2025, we kind of lead you to water in that sense.
And here's another thing. We haven't done questions in a while, and I know we got the same suspects in the chat. We got our guy Kane's Cats in there, LL, Andrew. Guys, we appreciate you being with us all the time. So if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat. We'll try to get to those at the end of the show. All right, Drew. Our friend Cody Nagel, 24/7 Sports, I believe was assigned this story because I don't think he was trying to come after our emotions at all a little bit. But he wrote an article, College Football's 10 Most Disappointing 5-Star Freshmen from Recent Recruiting Classes. And Drew, I mean, it stings a little bit, right? But that's it. It's the nature of the beast. But he wrote about 10 prospects over the last 2 classes that would fit under this disappointing category. So I kind of had a different spin on this in terms of how I really wanted to go about it. I went back, I watched all as many snaps as I could from each of these players in 2024. And I thought, all right, I can give a little bit of a brief rundown of what I thought about the player coming out and maybe where I see the player going now and how they're kind of projecting going forward. So let's start with Boise State quarterback Malachi Nelson, which I'm not going to push back on this. This would be the poster child for disappointments in the last 2 cycles. Number 13 player overall in 2023, number 5 quarterback. Nelson has appeared in just 3 games so far in his young career, completing 11 of 18 passes for 133 yards and an interception. All right, Drew, are you ready for the spin zone of spin zones here? I went back and I watched Malachi Nelson this year, all passing attempts, and there's not many of them against, I believe we had Portland State and we had Utah State. The talent is there, right? There's been a lot of, I would say, not misconceptions, but there's been a lot of obstacles with navigating the evaluation of Malachi Nelson, a lot of off-field stuff that popped up. There were things when you see him in person that kind of make you shake your head a little bit and kind of shake your confidence in terms of, all right, do we really want to put a 5th star in this guy? I'm interested to see at the end of the season what happens with Malachi Nelson in Boise State. Is this going to be a guy that's going to stick around in Boise? Is he going to look to portal again? I'm kind of curious, but Drew, it's so limited. We're talking about 18 passing attempts. But when you turn on the tape, you see the quick release, you see the ability to navigate the pocket, you see the arm talent, it's there. And he actually flashed some anticipatory throws that I thought, ooh, I can kind of chew on that for a little bit. You know, like if I'm a team watching that in the portal, I'm thinking like, all right, there's something there. And there is a part of me that thinks that there is a pulse there with Malachi Nelson. Is he going to end up being a top 32 player? Absolutely, probably not. The odds are probably against that. But if you were to tell me that Malachi Nelson 2 to 3 years from now was able to play himself into a day 3 NFL draft choice, I would buy a ticket for that. I could probably get on that boat. But I am super fascinated to kind of see, all right, what does this look like over the next 2 years for him?
Because I think the next 2 years are going to tell you a lot about how he's wired between the ears, Cooper. Plenty of former blue chip prospects that it doesn't pan out and we never hear from them again because they don't want to buy in. So doesn't win the quarterback battle. I mean, he's on a roster with a Heisman Trophy contender in Ashton Genty. He is sitting on the bench. I think you're going to have your answer about Malachi Nelson a lot sooner rather than later, right? If he bounces, leaves again, everything we'll need to know right there. But if he sticks it out at Boise State, I think that says a lot about him as an individual.
I know you have so much going on day to day. You're watching 2034s and all that type of stuff. But if you get 4 or 5 minutes to go watch the 18 passing attempts.
He threw a pick against Portland State. Let's move to the next.
Well, hold on. Go watch the tape, because a lot of what we're doing here is, in these articles and the stuff that comes out, well, PFF had him here and he didn't. He was graded here. That's all great. Watch the tape, have some context. And I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about all the stuff that we see all the time about all those things that we want to claim. Oh, okay. Is there any substance behind it? Is there any context? Did you see how you got there? Or are you just putting some stats out there to, put out a social graphic? All right. Next one. Micah Hudson, Texas Tech. This has not been what we thought it was going to be. Drew, we talked about a generational class of receivers, top 25 player in the country, number 5 receiver in the country. Drew, only 8 catches, 123 yards, 13 targets, ranking 7th amongst all Red Raiders. We've heard some things, but behind the scenes, that this hasn't been exactly the marriage that I think a lot of us thought it would be, especially with how potent an offense that Texas Tech has. Drew, you turn on the tape, you watch Micah Hudson. The flashes are there. I know it's limited context, but I'm not ready to take the parachute jump off the plane and hit the bail button yet. I do think this is a guy that is super high floor, so tough at the catch point, very strong, very natural, very instinctual. If something were to happen where Micah Hudson were to move on from Texas Tech, I don't think he'd have any shortage of suitors, and I think he'd bounce back pretty quickly.
Well, I think he's a disappointment because of the hype that Texas Tech had for him. Cooper, didn't he get signed by like Patrick Mahomes' gear or clothing line, that Adidas thing? He was one of the 8 athletes that Texas Tech signed. I mean, all we heard all offseason from Joey McGuire, Micah Hudson this, Micah Hudson that, and then you're not playing him. So to me, my one like real exposure point to Micah Hudson was at the Under Armour All-America game, where I think he had a tweaked hamstring. And I think his disappointment is also just the fact that all these other wide receivers are playing and making plays. I mean, you drop him into another recruiting class, are we having the same conversation? I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty. I don't know. I'm not as read in on this situation maybe as others are, but it is interesting. You talked about it. All we heard about was Micah Hudson during the offseason, and it's the first 5-star in Texas Tech program history. And then all of a sudden, the snap count is limited and he can't find his way onto the field. It's a little bit of give and take in the NIL era when you're dealing with these type of guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one pans out. Maybe they smooth things over with Micah Hudson, but right now off to a little bit of a rocky start there in Lubbock. All right, Drew, next one. Oregon quarterback Dante Moore, number 4 player just 2 years ago, number 3 quarterback, rushed into action at UCLA after he flipped from Oregon to the Bruins late in the cycle. Completed only 53% of his passes for 1,600 yards, 11 TDs, and 9 interceptions. When you turn on the tape of UCLA, it was a mixed bag. And there was a lot of stuff where you're like, I have no idea where he kind of picked up some of these habits, and the decision-making, which was so clean in high school, just seemed like he had like a very cool guy, casual type of flair to him when he was playing at UCLA, way too loose with the football. I'm all on board him going to Oregon, sitting a year behind Dylan Gabriel and kind of pressing the reset button. Drew, still high on this kid. It's going to be interesting because, like you said, Will Stein, Dan Lanning, it seems like they have a lot of confidence in Austin Novosad as well. So he's going to have to compete for that starting quarterback job next year.
Cooper, did you see the tweet that was going around yesterday after Anthony Richardson got benched? Did you see that, or you need me to pull it up?
About the quarterback development?
Yeah, Anthony Richardson, 22 years old, bench. Bryce Young, 23, bench. Trey Lance, 24, bench. Justin Fields, 25, bench. Will Levis, 25, bench. Zach Wilson, 25, bench, and so on and so on. I don't know why we're writing off Dante Moore. I mean, that UCLA team was not good last season. I honestly think if you want to talk about watching the tape, watch him against Utah. That defense, I think he shows some stuff in that game. And I know it didn't go well. I know there were turnovers, made some big-time throws. I think PFF scored it as a big-time throw. I think the 105 would have scored it as big-time throws as well. But yeah, a case where the kid was played a little bit too early, maybe. I think you're right. Him sitting, perfect situation there. I don't know if you've heard the same stuff I have about Austin Novosad. It's just funny, he's on this list after we go through the backup quarterback situations. I mean, if something were to happen with Dylan Gabriel, I could see a situation where, hey, Dante Moore gets the call, right? He has played more than Austin Novosad. So, no, I agree with you. I think it's a little premature here, and I think that's a product in general at all different levels of football, or we just can't wait and let guys kind of develop.
It seems odd with these quarterbacks. I mean, in a way, you see Rashada and you see Moore and you see these guys like, pathway to the field is so important to them. Then they go and they play early, realize they're not ready. And then they go to the situation that they should have gone to out of high school. I mean, can you imagine Dante Moore sitting 2 years behind Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel, the experience that you accumulate there? What has it meant for Garrett Nussmeier? What has it meant for Miller Moss? That type of continuity in the same environment. We talk about it all the time. Why are these guys failing at the NFL level? And it typically has to do with the environment changing and the offensive coordinator being new year in and year out. And that doesn't help a quarterback be successful. So same thing at the collegiate level as well. It seems like these guys are learning from their mistake that they have made early on in the career, and then going back and saying, hey, here's the decision I should have made the first time, in kind of correcting course there. So we'll see what happens with Dante Moore, Drew. Another quarterback situation that, I mean, I have no idea how this one's going to play out. But Jackson Arnold, number 10 player coming out, number 4 quarterback, 13 appearances since the start of last season. He's completed 60% of his passes, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, 6 INTs. And there are certainly a lot of things that you can look at. Obviously, the offensive coordinator and Seth Luttrell being let go. Their receivers are banged up. 5 new starters on the offensive line. Their run game has been stymied throughout the year. All those things that I talked about being contributing factors for young quarterbacks being successful, Jackson Arnold does not have that. Now, that doesn't get him get out of jail free card either. I mean, you turn on the tape and there's a lot of things to be desired. I mean, all the things that you thought Jackson Arnold was going to be when he was coming out at Denton Guyer was poised, accurate, composed, playing within himself, making the right decision. How many times can I say the same thing over and over again? The internal clock seems sped up. His confidence seems completely shaken. And this guy seems to be a little bit of a shell of what he was just 2 years ago. And Drew, he's got to find a path forward. But as of right now, like if you were looking at him as an NFL draft choice, he would be an undrafted free agent, and he would be in that category. So he's got a long way to go. Oklahoma, Brent Venables has a long way to go. Oklahoma's got to own this too. It's just has not been a good situation for Jackson Arnold to excel in.
You mentioned the 3 Ps, right? Play caller, not good. Pass protection, really not good. And playmakers, non-existent, I would say, for Oklahoma this season. I kind of saw this coming into the year. With that being said, Jackson Arnold has struggled, right? I saw in the graphic right there, deep ball strength is in the scouting report. I think that deep ball has gone away. I mean, from what I've seen, he has struggled to push it down the field. Now, that is certainly, a byproduct of the players around him, but I haven't seen that element of his game. Jackson Arnold, man, I think at the Under Armour All-American game two years ago, I mean, he was the sharpest, the crispest guy in practice. We're talking about the Gatorade player of the year. He needs a change of scenery. I'm not writing him off, Cooper. I think if you want to compare him to an NFL, he's a washed up first round pick. Well, I'm on the phone. I'm trading for him because I think he's still got a chance, right? He just needs to go to the right environment. I'm sure he's looking around, evaluating his options. I think he has what it takes to win at the Power 4 level.
I'm completely with you because, I mean, the other thing is I'm not trying to hate on Oklahoma here, but how can they clean it up in a year? How different is it going to look like in a year for Jackson Arnold with that offensive line, with the lack of playmakers on the outside? Those guys have been banged up. I'm sure that's something that he's trying to navigate right now and kind of what it looks like over the next couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens with Jackson Arnold. Like you said, I think a change of scenery probably in his best interest. Talking about a guy that's already had a change of scenery, let's talk about former 5-star cornerback Cormani McClain, Drew, a guy that you are very, very familiar with. Number 1 cornerback just a few years ago. Rumors swirled in July that after he walked on to Florida that he was already going to get dismissed from the team, excuse me. Billy Napier said that was blown out of proportion. He makes his debut against Kentucky. All he does is come in and have a pick 6, look pretty good in limited snaps. And the wait and see show for Cormani McClain still remains.
Excuse me. when he had that pick six, Cooper, I can't tell you how many text messages I got. I was watching the game and I didn't realize it was him. You have watched, I'm assuming, the cut up. You tell me, are we bailing on Cormani, or has he still got a chance?
I mean, I'm not bailing. There's just nothing to do here. I mean, you watch the tape and you're like, yeah, that dude is long. He's reactionary. He's got good quickness. He can run. He looks good. I mean, you watch the pick six and it's like, okay, I mean, that there's something with that dude. That being said,
that's 5 stars traits making a 5-star play, right? And
yeah, I mean, it's all about availability and dependability and responsibility and all the abilities in the world when it comes to Cormani McClain. Can he do enough good things off the field, build up the goodwill and the sweat equity to show that he can be relied upon by his coaches day in and day out? I think that's ultimately what comes to mind when I think about Cormani McClain. And hopefully he's grown up. I mean, it's a good thing that he's still there. Quite honestly, if you would have asked me if I would have thought he would have still been on the team, I would have said no. So it's a positive. We'll see what it looks like after building some momentum after that Kentucky game. All right, next one. South Carolina receiver Nick Harbor, number 15 in the country, number 1 athlete, Drew. There are a lot of other receivers that you could have put on this list as well. Hakeem Williams, Jurion Dickey, both those guys struggling. Harbor, obviously, Olympic background with the track speed. If you watch the show, you know how well that's been documented. But through 19 games, 23 receptions, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. Drew, interested to kind of see your temperature check here on Nick Harbor.
Yeah, this is one of the ones I disagreed the most with in the story because of Jurion Dickey and Hakeem Williams. I mean, look, we knew Nick Harbor was going to be a major developmental project, but he has things others simply don't. What do you say? He slipped out of Area 51. I mean, I don't know how you can't watch this catch against Alabama and be like, okay, I get why they ranked him where he did. When he made that catch, watching it on the couch, I was going crazy. My wife was like, why? I'm like, well, this is a guy that no one thought, could catch the football. And we saw a flash of it there. A long way to go with him. I'm honestly kind of not surprised, like the production numbers are this low. I mean, there was talk of him being a pass rusher at one point. He made it very clear he wanted to be a wide receiver. Then it was tight end. I'm still holding some stock in Nick Harbor. Is he going to go in the first round? I don't know, but I think NFL scouts, NFL executives are going to see that play and they're going to think, hey, well, he has that in him. We can unlock it.
I think 9 out of 10 collegiate programs, maybe I'm wrong here, would have told you that they would have liked him on the defensive side of the ball. And I would have been one of those guys as well. Nick Harbor wanted to play receiver. We're talking about a guy that I believe had 17 sacks as a junior. If he was 3/4 of his potential, if he reached 3/4 of his potential at the collegiate level, we're talking about a guy that's probably a top 10 pick with his athletic traits coming out. At the receiver position, Drew, you see him and he's one-dimensional from a vertical build speed standpoint. He's late getting in and out of breaks. He's not a natural pass catcher. And the hard part is, if you're South Carolina, they told him whatever he wants to hear. Well, I want to be a receiver and I want to run track and field. I want to have one hand in the cookie jar here and I want one hand over there participating in track and field and doing all this type of stuff. I don't know if that's been the best thing for his development, and clearly so. And Drew, I'm with you 110%. I don't really care that Nick Harbor has 223 yards, because what happens if it's the reversal and Nick Harbor's in one of these situations where he's playing exceedingly well, and then the conversation becomes, well, how'd you not bet on the 6'5", 220-pound guy that ran 10.18 or whatever it was that he ran? Nick Harbor is one of those guys, Drew. I think it's one of those things. People will say, well, how can a 5-star be a project? Nick Harbor is a developmental upside type of guy. He's been thrust into a situation at South Carolina, especially they're not used to recruiting those type of players. I mean, you go back to Clowney and Jordan Birch and now Dylan Stewart. He's not of that mold. This is a guy still very much learning that position. And I think there's still going to be a handful of Sunday evaluators that are always going to be super intrigued with a guy like Nick Harbor. Does it ever come together? I don't know. If I was willing to bet, probably not. But that's okay, because I still think there's a future for him out there. I just think he needs reps and he needs time to develop. And I don't think he's getting that luxury at South Carolina. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes or no this summer, because he'll now be draft eligible. You're going to see some tweets from the NFL draft media being like, whoa, this guy.
What's he going to run? Total freak.
And here's the other thing, like Lance Zierlein, we had him on the show a long time ago with NFL.com. I think you could take our scouting report of Nick Harbor coming out, and you're going to be able to just stick it there for Lance Zierlein. It's going to be the same thing, right? Physical freak, has to all come together, could play defense. The story won't change.
I wish he played defense, man, because I actually thought he had some natural stuff there. And, that's where I think it kind of, you had the fork in the road. He went one way. I think there was another type of dimension he could have gotten to. All right, next one, Lance Hurd, the LSU transfer, former 5-star, number 16 player, number 3 offensive tackle. Drew, he started 4 games as a freshman for LSU. Hurd ranks 13th among SEC linemen and highest pressure rate allowed in 5 games played this season. Hurd starting at left tackle for the Volunteers. And I have to admit, because of the standard of what I expect Lance Hurd to play up to, he has been disappointing. But am I going to throw some shade at a redshirt freshman starting at left tackle in the SEC that's still learning as he goes? Not really. And I do think he should be playing on the right side as well. You and I recorded the recruiting class breakdown for Tennessee. I think in a perfect world, John Campbell's out of there at right tackle. You slide Hurd to the right side. You put David Sanders at left tackle, or maybe you have a 1-year replacement Band-Aid. But this is a guy that relies so much on his upper body. You see that picture of him right there. He is so strong. He's got 36-inch arms. He has to learn that his feet and his upper body need to be on the same page. They need to be synchronized. And right now, this is a guy in terms of punch timing, really struggling. Really like him in the run game. In terms of pass protection, he struggles with speed, quickness, athleticism. I think if you put him on that right side, he'll learn to excel there. And I think reps is a big thing for him as well. The people that say, oh, Lance Hurd, what's his deal? I don't know, Drew. I get frustrated with the ready-made stuff, right? It's like the Jeremiah Smith and the Ryan Williams. And what's wrong with Cam Coleman? Why isn't he a freak? Like, it's like that stuff gets really old. Those guys are the outliers. I think Lance Hurd's going to be a tremendous player. He's all SEC as a freshman. And I think this is a guy like, we put a 5th star next to his name because we think he's got the potential to go day one. I'm not bailing here. I'm kind of sticking around. I get the criticism. But long-term, I still like him a lot.
It feels like another case where circumstantially, like, he has to play, but he probably shouldn't be playing. And this is maybe more of just kind of the current landscape of college football, right? You have to go out and get a tackle. You get a guy with a high price tag, and then you're going to want to play him, when in all reality, Lance Hurd should have sat for 2 years and played as a 3rd-year sophomore. That was going to set him up for the most success. I think he's a guy who's going to get better where it goes on. It's just so rare for these young tackles. Cooper, you wrote it about a few weeks ago, for them to step in and be able to grade out very, very well. I mean, Jordan Seaton doing it at Colorado, right, to some degree. Caden Proctor had his flaws year 1 at Alabama. Francis Mauanoa had his flaws year 1 at Miami. Both those guys have figured it out. I think Lance Hurd is as well. A little too early to write him off.
I mean, unless you're playing offensive line at IMG, I mean, that's really kind of what it's kind of coming down to. You're just a freak of nature like Caden Proctor and Mauanoa. And here's the thing. Both Mauanoa and Proctor, who we love, that I think are going to validate where we had them ranked inside the top 10, both went through their growing pains as freshmen. And you have people out there, you're talking about Caden Proctor playing high school ball in Iowa, then transitioning into the SEC. And it's like, well, I don't get it. He was a 5-star. Why isn't he up to snuff here? And it's like, man, you're talking about one of the most difficult positions in the entire game to play. And I think expectations got to be tempered there a little bit. All right, speaking of expectations, let's get into this one. You talked about Nick Harbor being disappointed to be on this list. Since we're throwing around the D word, Cam Coleman on this list, I don't get. Number 5 player in the country, number 2 receiver, 3rd leading receiver for Auburn right now. 14 catches, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns in 6 games played. Every time I watch Peyton Thorne, I want to rip my eyes out in that offense. And I'll tell you this. We had high expectations for Cam Coleman. He's been banged up a little bit this year with the shoulder. I think he's going to be fine. There have been some lapses when you turn on the tape in terms of dependability and consistency that, yeah, they're a little bit frustrating. But in terms of Cam Coleman, the prospect, and where we see these guys in 2 years and what I think about him, nothing has changed. He's got to get better at the catch point. He's got to get stronger. He's got to learn how to fight through contact. And I think he's got to adjust to the physicality of the SEC, which, and quite honestly, between him and Jeremiah Smith, I thought he would have the smoothest transition. He struggled with that a little bit more than I thought. But I love this kid. My opinion's not changing on him.
Well, the story states, Cooper, it's like Auburn's quarterback struggles may have contributed to a so-so season or something like that. I'm like, may, that's the word we're going to use it. They may have. You don't think Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown have contributed to the lack of production there? No, I'm with you. And Coop, go back to Cam Coleman. I mean, junior season, 500 yards receiving, doubles it as a senior. Yeah, he's been banged up. The other thing, Auburn hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiver. We say it all the time since 1999. Like, was he stepping into the best situation to be force-fed right away? I don't know. I think you can make a case. Maybe not. I'm certainly not selling any stock on Cam Coleman.
All right, another one here, Drew.
This is the one where I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I don't get it because I went back and watched the tape. I'm like, oh, well, I kind of love this guy. Amaris Williams, number 30, number 5 edge last year, ranked 6th in total snaps among the Tigers edge rushers. He's logging just 85 plays in 6 games. Former 5-stars only recorded 4 tackles and no sacks. It's tough out there, man. Amaris Williams, Drew, in the games that I've watched, of course, Alabama A&M is not the barometer. You watch a little bit versus Kentucky. You watch a little bit in terms of what he's done earlier in the season. The twitch, the get off, the speed to power. I just think this is more of a depth thing, and Auburn is able to kind of take Amaris Williams and let him develop at his own pace. There's nothing about Amaris Williams when I turn on the tape am I concerned about at all. And quite honestly, I watch him and I feel better about it when it's all said and done.
Yeah, disappointing. Don't need that word. How about like shameful? This was one of our 5-star outliers, Cooper. The fact that he's played 80 snaps, I think, is encouraging to me. You look at Auburn up front, a ton of veterans, a ton of guys they added through the transfer portal. Amaris Williams, he was like billed himself as a running back as a sophomore in high school. He camped at NC State with the ball carriers. I mean, this is someone that is still learning how to rush the quarterback. So the fact that he's been able to get his feet wet, I think, is personally encouraging. And I think he's going to be a big piece of that front seven in the years to come. I
see like a Jalen Walker type of curve with him. I think in 2 years, this guy's going to be one of those guys everybody's looking at and they're like, oh, man, this guy's a freak. You can do a lot of different things with him. You can play him with his hand in the ground. You can drop him. Drew, I think he's just a talented pass rusher. I'm excited for him to get more snaps. All right, here's the one that I think needs context. Alabama edge Keon Keeley. And is he an edge or is he a defensive lineman, right? And I think that's kind of where the whole conversation comes into place. I have this burnt into my head. All right, we're talking about the highest ranked defensive player 2 years ago, the number 1 edge. Drew, the snap count here, he's only played a total of 3 snaps, appeared in just 1 game. This one is surprising, yet I remember you saying to me very convictedly, you're like, I don't like the scheme fit here for him. And that was before Kane Womack. But remember, we're talking about a guy that was committed to Notre Dame, was going to play in an even front. That quite honestly was kind of like a perfect fit when you're thinking about what a 5 technique should be with their hand in the ground versus standing him up and now playing in this bandit role for Alabama. I just think this is the wrong on-field fit for Keon Keeley. And I would probably expect him to make a move this offseason. And I wouldn't be shocked if it was somebody like Notre Dame or somebody like Ohio State that made a little bit more sense to kind of fit his skill set.
Yeah, I mean, this one is certainly hard to stomach. Coop, let me ask you, if he were to enter the transfer portal, what type of grade are we looking at here?
Yeah, this is hard, right? Because this is like the philosophical process of kind of like how you see the guy. I would say like a day 2 grade. So you're probably looking around like a 93 or 94 would be my bet. I mean, I think that's the best that you can do. I mean, I'll give credit to Cody here. I mean, it's difficult when you're looking at this guy and you're saying, wow, this is number 1 ranked defensive player. And Drew, the funny thing about Keon Keeley is that there were no questions about this kid. I mean, he aced every test. You went and saw him. You loved him. We saw him at the All-American Bowl. He dominated. We talked to him in person. You and I remember right by the elevators. We had a nice 3-4 minute conversation with him. We walked away. We're like, whew, kind of love everything about this kid. Goes to Alabama, been a ghost. And it's just kind of like, this has never happened in my career where there's been a guy like this where you feel so good about, and through 2 years you're like, it is kind of like an unexplained phenomenon.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if he does enter in what that market looks like. Because I think
For sure. I mean, well, here, let me ask you, because you covered him. I mean, like, do you think there's a spot out there that makes sense? Like, I think of Michigan. I think that works. I mean, it's going to be one of those type of schools. I think Notre Dame would love to have him back in the fold. I think Ohio State. I think it's going to be kind of in that Midwest region for Keon Keeley in a school that kind of better fits him developmentally.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say an even front, right? Even front, even front, even front. Like, what about like Florida?
For sure. Well, we'll see who's coaching, right?
Yeah, I mean, right up the road, could have some momentum. Florida State, we know that they're going to be in the transfer portal, but I think
they're going to have to pay extra.
I think the Big Ten would make the most sense. Yeah, Michigan's a great one. Michigan State, I think, is another one. I mean, Illinois. I mean, look what they've done with these pass rushers out of Florida. Seth Coleman, Gabe Ockes.
Hey, all right, before we get done with that, any lasting impressions or any comments on that? Like any guy that you're like, you know what, kind of pisses me off, he's on that list, and I kind of love this dude.
I don't really have much issues with the list. And when it came out, I mean, it certainly lit up some of our text threads. There's some other guys I would have certainly put on there. I think Hakeem Williams, doesn't he like lead the country in drops, or he's up there? I mean, he has been
tough. It's been tough for him for sure.
Yeah, he's another one that's dealt with injuries. Like, I'm all for kind of facing these guys up front, but there's maybe some different names that I would have selected. I think the Dante Moore situation kind of a little bit too early. The Nick Harbor one, I think we hashed that out a lot. Cam Coleman as well. Out of everyone on this list, or it's like if we could go back and re-rank them, I think like the two, or I'd be like, all right, probably wouldn't have been a 5-star, like Malachi Nelson, Micah Hudson. I mean, Cormani, everything off the field said no, but then, he plays one snap against Kentucky and jumps in front of an out route and races into the end zone. Like, he's clearly got some stuff there.
Right. Yeah. Some of these guys, it's maybe not the physical stuff, whether it's schematic fit or right situation, or maybe just character stuff. So we'll see there. All right, Drew, we got a couple questions. One from our boy Kane's Cat. It says, how high can Clinton Portis' son rise in the rankings? I know Coop spoke highly about him after the camp in Charlotte that he went to. Kane's Cats, man, you were on it. You got the elephant brain, man. You remember everything. Drew, where do we have him right now? I need a little refresher.
Dude,
2026.
I'm scrolling. I'm looking.
I think day 3, right?
Yeah.
I like Camden Portis a lot. I think he's a nickel all the way. But there's some guys that you see genetically, and it's kind of funny, like Clinton Portis or Brandon Jacobs, and you watch their kids play, and they just play so much faster than everybody else. And Camden Portis, from like an instinct, key and diagnose standpoint, is so good. And yes, he's a little slight. Yes, he's a little shorter. I wish there was more meat on the bone left there, but just in terms of the football player, as a heady kid, instinctual, I like him a lot. Now, that being said, I will say this. if you're undersized, then you got to check all the boxes. And the first thing that he has is the instincts. And I think that's really important. So he doesn't fit categorically into the bucket of a guy that we would just boost in the rankings. Unless, there's only really a couple of those nickels a year, like Grayson Littleton this year, who we talked about earlier today, who's actually not lengthwise. He's in a pretty good spot, right, Drew? I think he's like 5'11 and 3/4, maybe just a little bit slight. But yeah, not the traditional riser, but a really, really good player. And I don't think that should take away from anything, regardless of where he ends up.
Yeah, a few things here. I mean, like you said, Clinton Portis's son. I think doing some reading, book about people that make the NBA, and they brought up sons of former NBA players shoot better free throw percentages than their fathers. And it's like, okay, why? Well, these kids grow up and they're getting the best coaching. And I think with football, how does this apply? It's like these guys are around the game. Like instinctually, they've been around it. They can read and react, and they've been doing it since they were walking around the facilities. I think that is what really separates, in my opinion, Camden Portis when you turn on the tape, just his football IQ. And you said it, Cooper. I mean, he's physical, right? Only numbers we have on him, a shade over 5'11", 158 pounds. He plays like he's 185 pounds. We'll see, coming out with a 2026 rankings update right here. I said this back in the summer. I'll say it right now. I think the cornerback board is wide open. There's a lot of guys that could be the dude. I don't know who the dude's going to be yet. I think as we get into camp season, it'll come closer into focus. But I think for Miami, like legacy prospect, like this is one where no, you take him and he could actually play and he could actually start for you.
All right. I like this question. It says, Oyster Boys 105 boys. Which 2025 prospects have been on your radar more now that they've played most of their senior season? This is a great question because we're always harping on the importance of the senior season. Drew, I'll start because I had some time to prepare for this while you were answering that question. Guys for me, like Alvin Henderson, we had him in the top 247. We took him out. He's broken every rushing record. The more you watch him, what I love to say, he's kind of taken the decision out of our hands. A running back committed to Auburn. He's been awesome this year. The more you see him, the more you like. He'll be in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl. So he's got one more eye test that he needs to ace, but tremendously excited about him. Carson Lawrence, another kid in my region out of McAllee, committed to Vanderbilt, and Vandy just does a tremendous job finding these guys in state. Barton Simmons, obviously, we've talked about the job that he's done, but Carson Lawrence is certainly a guy that I like a lot. You kind of go down the list of different guys, I think, in my area. We talked about Logan Anderson, linebacker heading to Clemson. Big fan of him. Mason Dunn committed to Ole Miss, the defensive back out of Tupelo, Mississippi. Tristan Norman, I'm a huge fan of. This Kinsey West kid out of Mississippi. I think he's a dog. He hasn't found a home yet. So you can go down the list. Talib Graham, London Simmons. All those guys are getting better and better and better. The other kid, Brendan Ains, committed to Wisconsin. Have him as an 88 in my region, and this is just a crafty pull by Wisconsin, a guy that kind of reminds me a little bit of Nick Herbig, on-ball, off-ball versatility, tough as nails, plays the game the right way, plays fast as well. So, the beauty of the senior year, really outside of the top 247 range, Drew, and I know you just got done kind of buttoning up your region in the state of Florida. So those are always guys where you like get into the 84s or the 85s, and you're like, whoa, this guy's taking a big step as a senior and maybe showed some stuff that we haven't seen in the past. So yeah, no shortage of names kind of popping for us late here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say look at the 2025 update. I mean, we pushed a lot of guys up where we loved the senior seasons. And I said it when we were talking Michigan on the front end. You can tell they're doing senior evaluations just based on the visitors they had. It was like Bradley Gompers, a big mover, Duke linebacker commit for us. They also had a safety, Elijah Dotson, who's committed to Pitt. I mean, I think those guys on tape are awesome. I mean, just to kind of follow what Cooper did in terms of guys in his region. I think I just went through 150 players in Florida that aren't inside the top 247. I mean, big guys committed to big schools to me that I'm way more bullish on Jarquez Carter, Ohio State commit. I know he's looking at Miami interior defensive lineman. I think he's had a really, really good year. Brandon Brown, another kind of nose. He's committed to LSU out of the state of Florida. I like what I've seen there. There's Miami offensive line commit, Jaden Wilkerson. I think what he has shown on tape as a senior, it's like, whoa, okay, like who's this guy? He's certainly going to be a riser. I think Kansas State and the Sunshine State, they got a few really good dudes committed. So I don't know what direction to go with this question, but there's certainly a lot. And I think the other thing too, Cooper, I mean, I don't know how much college ball you're watching these days. I feel like it's all I do on the weekend, but man, the guys that are making plays as freshmen, it's like senior season good. And Gabe Brooks on 24/7 Sports, our colleague, had a great story about the top 8 defenses in college football, highlighted one player. Every one of those players, it was like monster senior season, multi-sport and all that stuff.
Yeah, the guys that you feel the best about at the end, that's a luxury that we have that schools don't have. I mean, we're going to be and obviously these guys have all the resources, but in terms of the education, the live exposure, continuing to watch this senior season, we're not building a team here. We're ranking these kids. So as we evaluate the senior season, Drew, I think you made a great point. All the guys that we pulled out of the top 247 last year, where are they? What are they doing? Not to say that they can't be good players versus the guys that we put in. I mean, guys like Corey Parrish, right? You think about in the job that they've done, and those guys playing early as well. That all plays into it. All right, last question here.
Yeah, go ahead. Just to echo that, it's like we went back and we looked at our midseason update last year. All right, the new 5 stars were Jordan Seaton, who is starting at left tackle for Colorado. DJ Lagway, he went in at number 15 up to number 1, and we're going to see him this season. Coy Parrish came in, like you said. It's like every guy that we shot up the board is doing something here in 2024. The other thing, every kid that scored a touchdown in the All-American Bowl this past season has scored a touchdown as a true freshman in college football.
I like that. All right, last one here. Which 2025 quarterback do you guys see and have the best chance of starting? Knight seems obvious, but there is another. I'll push back on the Knight thing. I mean, I've said this multiple times. I think Deuce Knight is a little bit of a slower burn. We're talking about tempering expectations. Extremely gifted, very athletic. Not saying he's not going to play as a freshman, but to see him as full-time starter, that would be hard for me to see. Outside of Bryce Underwood, who we have talked about at the beginning of the show, that I think could start for either LSU or Michigan. Obviously going to be circumstantial to see what happens with Garrett Nussmeier. Drew, I think the one that makes the most sense is probably Keelan Russell at Alabama. And I just think he's ready to go. That being said, I could have said that about Dante Moore, and I did say that about Jackson Arnold. I said both those guys were the 2 most ready to go players. Guess what? They both played early, and the returns have not been great. And like I said, you can put a little bit of that on UCLA. You can put a little bit of that on Oklahoma. They deserve that. Keelan Russell would be walking into a very different situation in a positive way. And, I think he can I think he would be a guy, one of those rare guys. Like, I'm not in love with Alabama's quarterback room. I'm not in love with Simpson. I'm not in love with Lonergan. I'm not in love with Mack. Not to say those guys aren't quote unquote good enough. They're not good enough for the standard of Alabama football. Keelan Russell would be interesting. Can Kalen DeBoer afford to do it? I don't know. And then, Drew, I'll probably steal your thunder here. How about Malik Washington? I mean, physically just ready to go. And you talk about the poise and the gamesmanship that he plays with. He seems like a guy that could step in and be ready to go. Julian Lewis, if he ends up at Colorado, I think so. They're really not going to have another choice. Antoine Hill, what does that look like at Memphis? You scroll down, if Bryce Baker sticks with North Carolina, that seems wide open there. So I think there are a handful of guys that you could look at and say, yeah, I could see a quick pathway to the field.
I'm with you on Underwood. Don't need to talk about that. I think St. Clair needs time, going to take time. I think the same thing with Husan Longstreet. Keelan Russell's the one where it's like, okay, post Milrow, what's the plan here? I would assume they're probably going to maybe bring in the transfer to push Austin Mack there, but I think he could provide some sparks, some magic. I echo you on Julian Lewis, right? And maybe USC, but Indiana, what I think could see him stepping in there. Certainly Colorado. Antoine Hill, like you said, I mean, what he has put on tape as a senior, headed to Memphis right now. I'm surprised kind of more schools haven't, and maybe they have looked at Antoine Hill. But I think there's going to be a chance as a true freshman there. I mean, really after that, you kind of scroll and you look, and I think what also makes this difficult, Cooper, so we don't really know how the transfer quarterback dominoes are gonna play out, right? There's some spots where you're like, oh yeah, I can see that, but you don't know what these teams are gonna do. And maybe the question is more of who's ready to step in. Malik Washington, you said it at Maryland. You know, Mike Loxley, he's still there. Billy Edwards Jr., the current starting quarterback, is this the guy that people try to poach? I think that's a kind of a question with him.
Are you shocked that nobody's come after Malik Washington yet?
I mean, maybe they have. I don't know. Yeah. Yes.
Like it kind of seems like it would fit Michigan's, blueprint a little bit. And if Michigan, for whatever reason, missed out on Underwood, he seemed like he'd be a nice pivot. And I doubt, you got to pay him $5 million or $1.5 million a year, so that'd be interesting. All right, Drew, that's all I got, man. Anything else? Long show, one of our longer ones in a while.
Yeah, I'm unloaded the clip here, I think.
Well, good. That's what we're supposed to do. Guys, we are moving our way towards signing day. I think we're like, what, 36, 35 days out?
35 now.
Yeah, we're inching closer. We're inching closer to the transfer portal. Like I said, 247sports.com is the place to be, especially for those transfer portal updates as well. Wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, everything you need right there at 247sports.com. And don't forget the 105. You can find me and Andrew Ivins every Wednesday and Monday on the 247 Sports YouTube channel and CBS Sports Network, and wherever you find your podcast. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Guys, for our producer, Chris Belcher, for Andrew Ivins, I'm Cooper Petagna. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Monday.